fathers use the word feces to describe the usia, or the essence of God.
Mm-hmm.
But you also see many also use the word feces, like Saint Cyril, use it to mean a particular nature, what you would call, and what Aristotle would call a primary substance, a concrete thing subsisting. So this, for instance, you see highlighted in the Anathemas of Saint Cyril. He speaks of the hypostases. Actually, that's another thing. We'll get into that. But he speaks of a union of nature, of feces.
Mm-hmm.
So he speaks of enosis kata physin. He's of a union of nature. So the Chalcedonians would say physis only means essence. It's a rigid designator for essence, which kind of doesn't make sense, because he says that there's a union on the level of nature. So if nature means essence, that means that the Chalcedonians have to affirm that the essence is united.
So wouldn't that be like the whole Trinity?
The whole Trinity and all of humanity.
Yeah.
And St. Severus actually makes this argument. So nature has to mean, in that context, in the Anathemas of St. Cyril, it has to mean a particular thing. The particular thing being God the Word as one particular thing, and then the body and soul he assumed as another particular thing. So that's what feces means. Hypostasis, hypo, Egan always uses this etymology to explain what it means. Hypo means under. Think of hypothermic, your temperature is under what it should be. Stasis, so stasis, your stance. So sub in Latin, stance, substance, right? That's what hypostasis means. So hypostasis means a particular thing. Same thing. So when I speak of myself as a hypostasis, I'm talking about the concrete, particular thing that is me.
Mm-hmm.
The Chalcedonians will try and use, again, this understanding of hypostasis. They'll change it and they'll say it means person. Well, that's not true, because for two reasons. Firstly, St. Cyril speaks of the hypostases being joined together by a union of nature. He uses hypostasis in the plural. So if hypostasis means persons, that means St. Cyril is talking about two persons coming together. St. Cyril doesn't believe Christ was two persons coming together. He believed that Christ was two particular things coming together. So in the mind of St. Cyril, just from reading the Anathemas, we see that hypostasis and feces are synonymous. They both mean a particular primary substance. So that's what they mean. So we say from two hypostases, one hypostasis, from two feces, one feces. And I'm assuming you're Ethiopian?
Yes.
This is
we
highlighted
on Instagram.
What's that?
Yeah, I'm El Shaddai's younger brother, if you remember.
Oh, okay, all right. So we have the same thing, the same terminology in our reading of Kahulat Takad Andakad. Akad means hypostasis in this. Kahulat Bahari and Bahari means feces. So you see how we're using Akad and Bahari almost in the same way?
Yeah.
Same thing with hypostasis and feces. You want to add on that, Egan?
Yeah, it can be. You just have to know three things. Hypostases, think of it after emphasis as referring to the particular, something individual. Essence is what's shared. Feces is either hypostasis or essence. That's it. So nature can be used either for individual things or common things.
Mm-hmm.
What's common, we call essence. What's individual, we call hypostasis.
And then, what about Noma and Prosopon?
So are you talking about Knuma? Qnoma?
Yeah. As Nestorius used it.
Yeah, so Knuma is the Syriac version of hypostasis. So it also means a concrete, particular thing.
Okay.
And then prosopon. Prosopon is actually the Greek term for persona. So the term person, I know we use it in a very fluid way in English, but particularly in the Christological controversy, prosopon meant the outward manifestation of something. So for instance, St. Paul will talk about how he forgave in the person of Christ, meaning he forgave by showcasing the outward manifestation of Christ. And he uses other verses, I'm sure Egan has memorized, of prosopon being used in this sense by St. Paul. But prosopon simply means an outward manifestation. Let me give you an example of what I mean. The modalists in the 4th century would affirm that God has three prosopons. But that does not mean that they affirm the Orthodox doctrine of the Trinity, because for them, three prosopon simply means that God has three outward manifestations. So the word person is not enough. You have to go deeper, which is why the Cappadocians affirmed three hypostases in the Trinity, not just three prosopon. Okay? So this is very important, because what you'll see in Chalcedon is they do a really sneaky switcheroo, which is where they'll say Christ is one hypostasis, but for them, they don't mean hypostasis the way we just affirmed it as being a particular. They mean hypostasis in the sense of prosopon. We get this, by the way, if you're saying, well, why are you reading this in the Chalcedon? We get this from Theodoret of Cyrus. Theodoret of Cyrus, in the letter he writes after Chalcedon, says that hypostasis simply means a group of hypostases. So you can have a group of things, and then it has an outer mask, an outer manifestation of unity. And this is what Nestorius taught. Nestorius taught one prosopon, but two pneuma, or two hypostases, or two natures. Two natures, one person. That was Nestorius. Leo comes along, and what does he say? Same thing. Two natures, one person. So for us, it's not enough to just affirm Christ as one person. You also have to affirm Christ as one thing, one particular thing, from two particular things. Again, anything for clarification?
Yeah, on the Nestorius Chalcedon point, a lot of people miss this because they'll read Chalcedon that says one hypostasis. What's going on here? So, like you just said, Theodoret after the council, and Theodoret is important. Why? He was the only person immediately after Chalcedon, within a 50-year gap, to defend the council because he was told to. Leo verbatim writes to him, said, "You are free from all taint of heresy." That's what Leo tells Theodoret, and he tells him to defend Chalcedon in an epistle. So then he goes after Chalcedon and said, when we said hypostases, we just meant a mask, a prosopon. And guess who himself made that same move? Not a lot of people know this. Nestorius. Nestorius told Cyril, if by one hypostases you mean one prosopon, sure, there's one hypostasis. He says this in his Bazaar of Heraclitus. And Andrew of Samosata did the same thing. Andrew of Samosata, he wrote against Cyril's 12 anathemas. And he said, you know what, fine, Cyril, there's one hypostasis. There's not two hypostases. And Cyril said, yeah, thank you for agreeing with me. The problem is you're not agreeing with me. You're still being sneaky.
Yeah.
Those are his words. He says, you're agreeing with me, but you're not agreeing with me. So the word hypostasis and prosopon. Hear the word person, you're going to just assume it means a subject, right? But even think about that word subject. Subject, it sounds like substance for a reason. They have the same Latin root.
Mm-hmm.
It refers to an underlying thing.
Thank you so much. And
So did I answer your question?
Yeah, that answered my question. And is it okay if I ask another one, or are we a little short on time?
No, you're good. You're good. Good.
I was wondering when Dioscorus was deposed because he didn't answer the three summons, was that because of his house arrest? I know that the summons were technically invalid in some way, unless I'm forgetting. Eusebius was already condemned a heretic, and by Canon 74, a heretic cannot bear witness against such a bishop. So is that the reason why he didn't?
Yeah. So two things are happening, like you just said. So there's a rule in canon law: if you're summoned 3 times, you don't show up, you're condemned, right? That's how they got Chrysostom deposed, how they got Nestorius deposed, how they got a bunch of people deposed. So now it happened with Dioscorus. Why then is Dioscorus not canonically deposed? You just answered it. The canon right after, Apostolic Canon 75, says a heretic cannot be a witness against a bishop. And Eusebius was the one who was trying Dioscorus with the summons. Each of the 3 summons, if you read Chalcedon, he did each of them. He asked, summon him. He did the 3 times. Eusebius was a condemned heretic by 449. He has no right to do any summons, because the canon doesn't just say if you're summoned 3 times and don't show up, you're deposed. It says if you're summoned 3 times by men worthy of credit. Literally what it says, if you look it up, Apostolic Canon 74.
Mm-hmm.
So Eusebius wasn't that guy. Now, was Dioscorus under house arrest? When you read the life of Dioscorus in 454, so it's written by a disciple of Dioscorus, he explains how he was physically assaulted. Chalcedon shows he was physically assaulted for one of the summons, and then by the second one, they said, by the way, the guard saying, you can come out now. But then Dioscorus said, I'm ill, I'm sick. Which in Greek just refers to him being like unhealthy, which we know why in 454, because he was abused. So even if Eusebius was someone who's allowed to do a deposition, Dioscorus was being held back by violence. The first one, even the commissioners themselves had to go tell the guards to be easy on him so he can come. And by the second time, Dioscorus says he's unhealthy, which if you put 2 and 2 together, you can see what's happening. Mm-hmm. But obviously they won't accept Dioscorus' own testimony he was being abused. Forget that. A heretic cannot be a witness against a bishop. The canon requires that it's men worthy of credit who issue the thrice summons.
And it's also worth mentioning, because some people might argue, well, he wasn't really condemned because the council that condemned him we don't really accept. But the problem is that Chalcedon actually affirms 449. It affirms it because it holds as patriarchs the ones which 449 replaced instead of the ones which 449 deposed. So it actually respects 449's decision of deposing the patriarchs of Antioch and Constantinople, but then somehow rejects the decision of the council to depose Eusebius. So this is an inconsistency.
Which they didn't even reject. Ephesus 2 was formally annulled by like session 11. Dioscorus' deposition happened in session 3.
Exactly.
Wow.
But you know who was deposed and was brought in addition to Eusebius, was brought in without any council trying him, and Dioscorus actually points this out as uncanonical.
Theodore?
And the council completely skips it. Yeah, Theodore, exactly.
Wow.
So the Council of Chalcedon, setting aside its heresy, is uncanonical on so many counts.
Man. I think this should be one of my last questions. I was wondering like what on like the political side, what like politics played into Chalcedon. I know that there was post Ephesus 2, there was the emperor of the Roman Empire during this time had like gotten deposed or like passed away or something, and that effect that somehow affected Chalcedon and such.
So there's two things here. So first, just since you mentioned the imperial level, Emperor Theodosius the Younger, who was the emperor at the time of Ephesus, fell off his horse and died. He was the one who ended up upholding Ephesus, because after Ephesus, around the same time as Ephesus, John of Antioch and Nestorius had held their own Ephesus. And so it was up to the imperial authority to decide which one was true, because they're kind of deciding against each other. So Theodosius was Cyrillian. I mean, he's the one that accepted St. Cyril, accepted the Council of Ephesus, and affirmed Miaphysitism. And by the way, he's venerated as a saint both by the Chalcedonians and by us. So he falls off his horse, dies. His replacer is Marcion. Marcion has a very, very ambitious project, which is he wants to cover the West and also the East. So he wants to cover the West and he wants to cover the East. The West, as you know, I'm not sure if you know this, but at that point, it was overrun by so many of the Vandals and the Ostrogoths and the Visigoths. So he needs as much political capital as possible to be able to govern the West. And this is pretty much what the Byzantium will try and do from Chalcedon onwards. But that's going to require consolidating as much support as he can in the Christian West, which means he has to appeal to Leo. So that kind of gets us to Leo, because Leo is also a really important political figure to understand Chalcedon. Leo also has his own ambitious project, which is he wants to make himself the supreme pontiff of the church, pretty much. That's his understanding. Really, where you get the understanding of papism as articulated by later Roman Catholics, it starts with Leo. Leo is the one that believes Rome was given the keys. Peter speaks through the Pope of Rome. Rome is the one that's able to make judgment. If you remember, the reason why Theodoret is able to be exonerated without any conciliar decision is because Leo exonerated him. Okay? And Leo already does not like Alexandria. When Dioscorus gets ordained as Patriarch of Alexandria, Leo sends him a letter pretty much trying to bully him and telling him on what days he can do this and celebrate these feasts and what days he can't. So Leo already has a mind of trying to make himself that guy, so to speak. Okay? So when he finds out in 449 at the Council of Ephesus, which Theodosius believed was ecumenical, and Theodosius ordered to be held, when he finds out that his theology wasn't upheld, that his tome wasn't accepted as dogma, he gets extremely angry, right? And that's why Chalcedon kind of already starts out with an anti-Dioscorus agenda, because Leo has already set everything in place to make sure that his tome is going to be accepted no matter what. In fact, I talked about this on the Rustan video. I don't know if you saw this, and Agan has talked about this many times on his page. Leo already was set on the tome being accepted. He didn't care if the council was going to be held, was going to decide yes or no. In fact, if Chalcedon would not accept the tome of Leo, because Marcion is so desperate to have Leo's support, and Leo is so desperate to consolidate his supreme authority, the council would have just been moved to Italy, and they would have found for the tome anyways. Okay, so you have Marcion, who's power hungry. In fact, he wants to be the greater version of Constantine. That's why there's 636 bishops invited to Chalcedon. You know how many there were at Nicaea?
315?
318.
18.
So this is on purpose. Marcion wants exactly twice as many bishops as Constantine assembled to come at his council. 318 times 2 is 636.
Which
So
is
the
why he wanted a new creed, by the way.
Exactly. Ephesus says that there shouldn't be another creed made. This is what Ephesus says. Chalcedon says we don't want to write a creed. Marcion says you have to. They try and write a creed, which says from two natures, and then the commissioners, those who are in authority, Leo's people, the legates, read it and they say, well, Leo says into nature. So the whole council is politically motivated by Leo's egoism and Marcion's desire for power. And the bishop should have confessed the faith and died as confessors and martyrs, but instead they decide to capitulate for the sake of ease. If you want to add to that, Igor.
Very quickly, yeah, there's more to it than that, because a lot of the people at Chalcedon were originally supporters of Dioscorus. A lot of them rejected two natures after the union, accepted one nature. So how do we explain that big shift? Keep reading the sessions. Every single major bishop was promised something big to accept Chalcedon. Take, for example, Juvenal. Juvenal was the bishop of Jerusalem. Nowadays, when we think about Jerusalem, like, oh, it's one of the major apostolic sees, that's not how Jerusalem functioned. It wasn't even a patriarchate. It became a patriarchate at Chalcedon. That's what was promised to Juvenal. So that's why he switched up. He originally said, if I accept Chalcedon and the tome, do not receive me back.
Yeah.
So he accepted Chalcedon and the tome. When he went back to his synod, they didn't receive it. So
He had to come back to Jerusalem with soldiers. Soldiers forced his way to Jerusalem and made him, by violence, the patriarch.
That's Jerusalem. Jerusalem was promised a patriarch. What's the political motivations of Constantinople? It's simple. Going in, he was promised you'd have the same dignity and honor as Rome. You'd be the new Rome. Right? Because that was the canon at Constantinople I, and it sort of failed. Nobody recognized that. Damascus was pretty clear, we're not accepting this canon. So Leo basically said, okay, we'll let you do your canon 28, whatever you want. Sure, you'll be the new Rome. That ended up didn't happening, but Anatolius was still loyal to Leo. Said, okay, fine, whatever. So that's what Constantinople was promised, a primacy of honor right next to Rome. What about Antioch? Antioch was promised bigger jurisdiction, and more than that. The guy who was deposed at 449 as the patriarch of Antioch, Domnus, and he got replaced, they asked him at the council, this is recorded, all right, we know that your deposition the whole time, it was bogus, right? We just annulled it. You want to become patriarch again? We'll find a way with this new patriarch. You know what he says? He says, no, I don't want to be patriarch. Just give me the revenue I had when I was a patriarch, without me being a patriarch. I'm not kidding. He was promised the patriarchal money without being a patriarch. So Antioch got bigger jurisdiction. The former patriarch got money. Patriarch of Jerusalem was leveled up to a patriarchate, and it's not just a bishop under Antioch. And Constantinople was promised a primacy of honor. So everybody is denying the faith for something. Leo's supremacy, Constantinople's primacy, Antioch's bigger jurisdiction, Domnus's money, and then, did I miss anyone?
No, that's it. That's the only one that's left is Alexandria, and Alexandria sticks to the truth. And what does she get from it?
Exactly.
No. Okay.
So,
Thank you so much. I still have I have two more questions. Not gonna lie. Real quick. So do you think that there was any truth to certain language barriers between like Latin versus Greek when they're trying to like have communications during Chalcedon?
All of Chalcedon is in Greek. The legates, it's debated whether or not they can speak Greek, but it's like three dudes. And either way, they're bankrolling the council with whatever they want. They're the ones who presided Dioscorus' deposition. They're the ones who wanted the creed replaced, and they're one of the ones who accept the letter vibos. So that's just a minority. There's no Latin versus Greek issue at Chalcedon. Why? The tome of Leo, even though it was translated in Greek and Leo didn't like it, nobody was accepting it for its Greek form. They were accepting it with Leo's own interpretation that was being relayed through the East. Because that's Leo had the Patriarch of Constantinople interpret how you should read the tome. So that wasn't an issue. Number two, the 12 anathemas were already translated in Latin before Chalcedon. And it was a very faithful translation. We have it to this day. Translated by Marius Mercator. He translated it, don't divide the two hypostases, as don't divide the two substances. He translated natural union as union according to natura. Right? It was faithful translation. So everyone knows what everyone is saying. Most of the council of Chalcedon, like all of it is in Greek. All of Ephesus is in Greek. Everyone knows what the 12 anathemas say. Everyone knows what Theodotus say. Here's how we know it wasn't a language barrier. They themselves purposely didn't read the 12 anathemas. Like they were asked, hey, we're going to read the 12 anathemas. They changed the subject, which is very odd to do. They wanted to read the third letter to Nestorius. They changed the subject. They only read the second letter to Nestorius and the Formula of Reunion. You know who loved those works the most? The Antiochians. They would use those documents to show, look, Cyril repented to our position. He was a Diophysite the whole time. So they purposely avoided the Miaphysite works and read the works that Nestorius's crew loved from Cyril. And one of the 3 times Cyril is cited at Chalcedon in support of the tome, he's cited 3 times. You know one of those guys who cite Cyril to prove the tome is in line with Cyril?
Who?
Theodoret of Cyrus.
Dude.
So it tells you they're avoiding certain works and picking other works. They know what's in those documents, and they're purposely not reading them.
Okay. And okay, I had a question. Just if you could explain a little bit on how energies and I did get a little bit confused when I tried studying some of the essence energy distinctions with some of the Eastern Orthodox. I was wondering our thoughts on that, and unless I'm mistaken, we believe in Mia Energia with Christ. Unless I'm.
Those are 2 different topics. One is talking about the essence energy distinction in the Godhead. The other one is talking about the energies in Christ, the economy of the incarnation. I would encourage you to go on my page and check out the interview I had with Egan.
Mm-hmm.
Cover this.
Okay.
Just to sum up briefly, the Orient Orthodox affirm what is called a formal distinction between essence and energies, simply meaning we don't affirm that God is made up of parts or that there are 2 things, one called the essence, the other called the energies. God is one, and he's perfectly simple. The energies are simply the activities of God, the outworkings of God pouring forth from him. And the example Egan likes to always give, you can give it if you want to turn here.
Yeah, to show you the reviews, I'll give you one example. Think about a road from Athens to Thebes and a road from Thebes to Athens. Those are 2 places. So like, I'll give you another one. Like the road from Disneyland to like New York and the road from New York to Disneyland. Right, it's 2 different places.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say those are 2 different roads?
No, not necessarily. Right.
The same road.
Yeah.
So would we say that the 2 directions are only conceptual?
Not entirely.
Exactly. So what do we do here? They're not completely identical, but they're also not 2 things. So how do we get out of this puzzle? You would employ what's called a formal distinction. It's a later term. It's coined by John Duns Scotus, but it's just a scholastic simplification of the idea of an extramental distinction, but not a distinction between 2 things. So it's one thing, as Cyril says, it's one thing with all that it entirely possesses. So it's a distinction before the mind. We're not just making it up in our brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
The direction from Thebes to Athens is different from Athens to Thebes, right? The one who's making the road designed it that way. He started from one place and ended another place, right? But it's still one road. If we say it's 2 roads, well, I only see one road. So it's one road with an extramental distinction within it.
And do you guys also touch on the wills of Christ in that video? Like Miathelitism and stuff.
Yeah. For Mia Energism.
Mia Energism. Okay.
He acts as the God-man. He doesn't act as God doing divine things and act as man doing human things. Everything he does as the God-man. You try and find an example of something only human that Christ did. Every lowly property of Christ, you'll always see something divine about it. Like find his lowest moment. Think what's Christ's lowest moment?
40 days in the desert, fasting.
40 days in the desert, right? In one sense, some fathers point out, how did he go 40 days without eating? Right? That's pretty difficult. But there's divinity there. And then also when he's tempted, he shows forth that he's God. You shall only worship the Lord your God, right? Man does not live by bread alone. Every word which, like any human would fail this temptation here. So you see his divinity pouring forth. Think about his crucifixion, right? It's something very lowly happening. But you still see everything going dark. The veil of the temple being torn into 2, right? You see his divinity pouring forth. Think about his most humiliating moments, being born in a manger.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Star of David, still being worshipped by the Magi, right? There's nothing that's just human in Christ. Like there's no single moment I can point out in Christ where I say, yeah, that's just the human nature. It's always the God. Everything about Christ is the God.
And by the way, this is not just Egan's articulation. Saint Dionysius the Areopagite, who's venerated by both Oriental and Eastern, in his letter to Gaius says this, like what Egan said at the beginning, verbatim. Not doing things human nor things divine, but revealing to us a new theandric energy. Theandric meaning God-man energy. And the same thing applies to, you asked about the will of Christ, you can check the same video, right, of Egan. We affirm meothelitism. Christ does not have two wills, but he has one will, one incarnate will. And so, everything that you see in St. Cyril and all of the earlier fathers is about the oneness of Christ. We don't divide Christ into two in any way.
And that one will of Christ, being Mia, is kind of similar to the same way where Christ's nature is Mia, yet the Trinity is still like one essence, and the will of the Trinity is still one.
So, will is proper to subject. That's what Saint Cyril teaches us. So, because God is one subject, his will is one. Because Christ is one subject, his will is one. So, there is the divine will of God the Word, which is the impetus. It's like it's the source. It's the source of all the decision making. It starts from God the Word, but he uses his humanity instrumentatively in order to make those decisions. And so, because of that, every act Christ does, he doesn't do it divinely or humanly, but he does theanthropically. He does as the God. You want to touch on that again?
All right, man. Glory be to God. Thank you all. Thank both of y'all so much for clearing up all these things for me. May God continue to bless y'all in y'all's ministries, and bless y'all with many more years. Thank you so much.
God bless you.
Good night.